Today we're going to speak about the next Mishnah in the sixth parak in Pirkei Avos. So we're doing the 48 ways of that Torah is acquired, and it's going to have so many life lessons that it's going to blow your mind. What I mean life lessons means that we have to change the way we live, that we're all doing it wrong. Be'ema u'v'yira. With ema, with awe, and yira, fear. So the Talmidei Rashi explain, ema means ema shamayim. Umora means HaRav. You have to have awe of God and fear from your Rabbi, which is similar to the way Rashi in Chumash explains the word tipol aleim a mosa v'fachad. It's one of the sentences in Oz Yosher that the fear should come, it should fall on them a mosa v'fachad. So a mosa means fear of the one that's far away, pachad means the one that's closer. So here also the one that's further away is God, and the one that's closer is your Rebbe. Tipol a mosa v'fachad. What's the difference of the feeling that a person has in his relate of awe of God? Awe means, and from the Rambam it's clear it feels the same way. The words, when there's awe of God, that means that I am totally, I'm totally insignificant, and the fact that I'm just part of Kaviyachos, so to speak, of his reality. I become part of his reality. Becoming part of someone infinite, of God's reality, gives me reality. When a person has real aimless shamayim, so then he actually feels good. He feels he exists because he feels he's part of God's reality, and God is what is, and I'm part of what is. You know, none of us are sure that we exist, but if I'm connected to He who is existing, it is the definition of existence, therefore I exist too. That's what Ema does. Ema gives a person a feeling, I exist, which there can't be a greater feeling of empowerment. I know I exist because I'm connected to God who is everything. What about Yira from the Rebbe? I have to learn humility. The Rebbe's here and says, don't do this, don't do that. I need humility when I learn. How do I get humility? The Rebbe said, he criticized, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, so therefore I'm getting humility. Here's my teacher is telling me I did this right, but you did that wrong, you did that wrong. That itself gives you person humility. One gives a feeling I exist. And when someone puts you down, how do you feel? You feel you don't exist. That is a very humiliating experience. When someone is able to put you down, you feel you don't exist. That's a very humiliating experience. The expression in the Talmud is that the Rebbe is zrok mor b'talmidim. He should put the little fear into the students. He has to give them. Speaks tough to them. You got to put them in their place. So now I'm the student. I'm getting two messages. I understand God, learning Torah, learning something which is relevant, and it's God's message to me. He's giving me a message how to live life, and that how I can know life and know what's true, and feel and be connected to truth. Then I know I exist. When my Rebbe who teaches me, I know I don't exist because he's teaching me humility. You make mistakes. Don't think you're so great. You're making mistakes. I want to go through this is a tremendous relevance to this. How do you deal? I mean, does anybody like being told off? You did this wrong. You did this wrong. Somebody criticizes you. You really don't like it too much. You don't like being criticized. So how do we deal? How's the Rebbe supposed to deal with criticism? If he's criticizing the Talmud, he should have an adverse relationship with him, which is not good. If you criticize your children, what are you going to hear from them? You're going to hear them rebel. Criticize your children. Nobody's doing this right, so everybody should listen carefully to this. There's a pasuk here in the Torah. It happens to be in this week's Parsha. That's the... I guess Hashem knew we'd be learning Parshas Baloscha at this particular time. Moshe Rabbeinu is so frustrated that the Jewish people are complaining. And then they finally say, give us food, and they're just complaining. They're complaining. Then they're complaining on the women they're not allowed to marry, that God forbid them to some consanguineous relationships are forbidden. So he finally turns around to God. Moshe says, why did you do anything so terrible to me? Why didn't I find favor in your eyes that you're putting the burden of this whole nation on me? Hanochi harisi es kol ha'am, said, did I become pregnant with these people? Did I give birth to them? Ki somer elai so'eu b'cheikecha, carry them in your bosom, kasher yisa omen sayonek, like be their nursemaid. God, is there anything that I did terrible that you're making me treat them like a nursing mother? What did I do so bad, God? You don't like me. What did I do bad? What does Rashi say, like a nursing mother? Rashi says that almanas, with the understanding that they'll curse me and stone me. That a child will curse and stone his parents. This is Moshe Rabbeinu criticizing the Jewish people. In fact, there's a sentence earlier on the Torah where Moshe says, Od mat, a little more, God, if I keep on pushing, usagaluni, they're going to stone me. What does it mean that I hope nobody in this room has thought about cursing or stoning their parents? And yet this is the generation that ate mon from a shemayim, that stood at Har Sinai and said, Nasa v'nishma. God, just give us the Torah. And 40 days later, they're complaining about everything, and they're finally saying to God, that Moshe is so frustrated, he says, God, why do I have to listen to their cursing and stoning? So what is that means? What is a normal parent? Did he give birth to the child? A normal parent, he gave birth to the child. It is your child, so therefore you have to be prepared for cursing and stoning. Moshe's only problem was he wasn't their birth mother, but if they had been the birth mother, he would understand they want to curse. How come that doesn't resonate with us, that we want to curse our parents? In fact, when you hear somebody want to curse his parents, you would think you'd have a very poor opinion of them, and yet Moshe Rabbeinu is accusing the Jewish people as a nation. They want to curse Moshe Rabbeinu, who has to be their mother. If someone says something to you, I want to go through the background of this. When Adam Rishon was allowed to eat everything from the tree, anything he wanted, from the Gan Eden, except one tree. He couldn't have one tree. And he ate that tree. And God said, Adam, did you eat from the tree that I told you not to eat from? So he says, the woman you gave me, she fed me. V'ochel, and Rashi, and I will continue eating. God, you hear what I'm saying? Did you eat from the tree? I will continue eating. I mean, he's escalating a war against God. I will continue eating. What is going on over here? How does Adam Rishon is the paradigm of what a human being is. He was the perfect human being. All of us have his genes inside of us. We're all descendants of him. And he says, God, do you hear what I'm saying? I will continue eating. Was he crazy? God already told him he's going to die. And not only did he tell him he was going to die, on the day that he ate, he was going to die. So he didn't die on that day, but he became mortal. Until then, he was immortal. And on that day, he became mortal. So he understood that he's a mortal human being. He's going to die. He internalized the fact that he's going to die. And once he's going to die, he tells God, and I'm going to continue eating. How does he have what's going on? What is our parents saying to us? What is the little voice in us saying to us? Because the Adam Rishon's behavior is a voice that all of us have. It's an incredible thing. God, you're controlling me, God. You created the world for me. And now you're controlling me. God, you're controlling me. If it would be in my interest, you wouldn't be controlling me. You give me something to do. I want to do it, fine. I don't want to do it, not. But now you're punishing me for wanting to do something. That means you're limiting the way I have to act. And he starts complaining and starts escalating the war. God, you're interested in yourself. You want Hasidim, God. It's not that you're interested in me. You're interested in yourself. And therefore, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to continue eating. No, Adam Rishon is holding man responsible, holding God responsible for controlling his behavior. And nobody wants their behavior controlled. When a parent tells a child, don't do something. In fact, if the parent tells the child, okay, yeah, you can go out Motzai Shabbos, but I want you back at 12 o'clock. Here, you can have the car, I want you back at 12. What time's the child going to get back? 12:30. You gave me a car, you want me to, I'm going to have a nice time, but you can't tell me what time I have to come back. That you're trying to control me. And he feels very resentful being controlled. And everybody feels resentful being controlled by their parents. And that's Baruch Hashem, there's a whole Jewish industry called psychology and psychiatry that you can go and lay down on a couch and bash your parents for 3 times a week for $250 a pop for a 45-minute session. So the psychologist now has a parnasa that he can send all his kids to college and give them an education. And you feel good bashing your parents. Yes, please tell me what you feel. What did they do to you? And if you stop, he'll ask you a question to reawaken some resentment you have. And sure enough, you'll be resentful, and it'll come spewing forth each week. For how many years is that? 3 times a week. The only time you stop going to a psychologist is when your money runs out. But until your money runs out, you keep on going. Nobody wants to be controlled. The human condition is anti-being controlled. If you're doing me a favor, let me be the decision maker of whether or not I want to do it or not. Don't give me something and then say, if you don't do this, I'm going to clobber you. You want to give me life, you gave me life, but don't give me restrictions. He understands the restrictions of don't destroy the world, because I gave it to you. So this is what I'm giving you. I want you to keep the house rules. But things that are not destructive of the world, eating a fruit is not destructive of the world. Just that you're not listening to me. That means you're making this a personal issue. That I have a tremendous resentment. And it's the same thing. If, my father gives me the car and says, don't smash it up. I understand that. Don't break the car. Don't let it run out of gas so that the motor gets broken. That we all understand. But when he makes it personal, I want you home at this hour. I'm taking good care of the car. I'm bringing it back. I'm filling it up with gas. And now you tell me be back at 12 o'clock instead of 12. I'm an adult. If I'm old enough to take responsibility for a $40,000 vehicle, I'm probably old enough to come back when I'm ready to come back. So what's the solution? If you can't control your children, what's the solution? So I'll tell you what most people do. In most homes, I don't know what the numbers are. Most. In many homes, I told you not to do this, so you slap the kid. Okay, that's not here. We're better. We don't slap him. We just put him down. What's the matter with you? We told you to do something. Or the child starts getting uppity. Stop bossing me around. I say in some homes, when the child says, stop bossing me around, he gets a slap from his father. But in other homes, the mother, usually anytime, doesn't slap the child. The mother says, I'm your mother. You can't talk to me like that. I'm your mother. Don't talk to me like that. That's also wrong. That's the wrong thing to do. The child feels controlled that way too. In fact, the way that plays out is that the child says, did I ask you to be born? He's not verbalizing this, but did I ask you to be born? No. You chose to have a child. If you chose to have a child, then stop. Then you did that for your sake or my sake. Well, it's all for your sake. So why should I listen to you if it's for your sake? Why should I listen to you? You had children for your sake. It's not about me. For your sake, you don't want me to do this. What am I supposed to do? Kill myself? What are my options? Kill myself? So you can't relate to any of this? It's bad enough you can't relate to any of it. Cindy, I know you can't relate to this. You have children for yourself. So, it's all about the parents, not about the child. So stop bossing me around. Stop bossing me around. And I can't wait till the day that I'm going to be getting out of the house and doing what I want. There's very few parents who know how to deal with this issue. Most of us as parents, and I'm not excluding myself from this, except what I learned from my wife. I'm going to share it to you. What's taken me finally working it out 55 years. But she told me one thing. And this is an unbelievable thing, and this is where it starts from. One of my children wanted to do a terrible sin. He wanted to buy a white shirt with blue lines in it. And in the Yeshiva world, that was the same as doing idolatry. And especially in the community, because what kind of Rosh Yeshiva that his child is wearing a white shirt with blue lines? And I said, listen, I don't care about white shirt, blue lines. When you go on vacation, in Marco Island, you can wear whatever you want. But in Miami, I'm the Rosh Yeshiva, you shouldn't do that. Okay, I said that to him. My wife calls me over. I shouldn't do this in front of him. So listen, your son loves you, and he'll do whatever you tell him to do. But I'm telling you, never tell a child, never, ever tell a child anything that's for your sake. Make sure it's in his sake. Is there anything good the child himself has? Does he get anything out of this, wearing a white shirt with blue lines? Do I think it's harmful to him? Do I think it's going to detract from his Yoreh Shamayim? When I went to Yeshiva, Everybody wore color shirts. In fact, the best guy, who's now a Rosh Yeshiva in Slobodkin, Eretz Yisrael, was the best guy in Lakewood, wore a pink shirt. I saw it myself, a pink shirt with a bone, a hole inside, and whatever, I don't know, there's a word for it. And, it pulls up the tie, and very, very smart. I mean, that was 1958. He turned out pretty good. So I guess it wasn't the Avodah Zarah. So what's going on over here? So therefore, never tell him anything that's not good for him. Basically, if you stop telling your children anything that's good for you, then you almost stop talking to them. So when your child starts saying, I don't want to do my homework. This I've told many parents. What's going on here? You got homework for school. You get the list. Did you do your homework? I did my homework. Let me see it. Let me see it. You didn't complete it. That's the wrong thing. Don't discipline them to do homework. Why? Because you're telling them something that it won't be good for you, that they're going to flunk a test. You think your child wants to flunk a test? He doesn't want to flunk a test. She doesn't want to flunk a test. The smartest thing to do is, okay, you don't want to do it? Fine. And you know what's going to happen tomorrow? They go to school. You're going to get what happens without telling them. In fact, they're going to get a very poor grade. And you think a child wants to be thought of as a dummy by his peers? So he'll learn how to, or she'll learn how to make the effort to study so that she shouldn't look stupid. That the child's doing for themselves. They're not doing anything for you. For you is that you're the one that wants to make sure you get your money's worth out of tuition. And if your child doesn't learn anything and flunks out of school or flunks the year, you get very upset at that. And therefore you pressure them, hurry up, make sure you study. I'm paying good tuition and I don't want to see that you get bad grades. That doesn't work because that you're doing for yourself. But if you tell the child, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. And then you see the child will start regulating themselves, and then you'll really have nachas. That's the way you're supposed to deal with children. Now, what about the child that tells you, I hate you, or starts hitting you? A child that's old enough, not a 2-year-old who doesn't understand that. Every child that's weaned starts hitting their mother. How do you deal with that? You say nothing. Don't say I'm your mother in a nice way. You can't talk to me that way. Or you shouldn't talk to me that way. You can't talk to me. That's puts the child down. Don't say anything. I used to think, that's why I know this is a new class, because actually I used to think that, what about if the husband will criticize, if the father will tell, he's standing there, so instead of the mother saying, you can't talk to me like this, your husband says you can't talk to your mother like this. So I thought that would be okay. I used to think that was okay, but that's wrong too. That's wrong too. Because how does a child view parents? As one entity. So it's actually the father saying for the mother. It's also that's like the mother saying. So how do you do when the child does something terrible like that, starts hitting you? We're not talking about that they're giving you, serious injuries that they're going to cripple you. Just to express their anger. How long will it be till the child beats up their sibling? The child starts beating up their mother. How long will it be till they start beating up their sibling?
Beating up the sibling before the mother.
What?
They'll beat up the sibling before the mother.
No, I'm saying not necessarily. Not necessarily. The mother, they had something, the mother did something, but next time they'll certainly... No, you're not listening to what I'm saying. the next time after the interaction with the mother, when the sibling comes, they're gonna hit the sibling for sure. They're gonna hit the sibling for sure. That's when you can say you can't hit your sibling. You can't hit your sibling. Don't say you can't hit me. You can't hit your sibling. That you can do. That you should do. Or
no hitting in the house.
What?
No hitting in this house. We don't hit in this house.
That's a rule. I don't know that rules are good. Rules are very restrictive. You know.
Not good.
So you're just supposed to let the children
What?
grow up like weeds?
No, what?
Like weeds? You just let them do whatever they
Oh,
want?
that's what I'm going to answer. That's what we're coming to answer that question. Another option is
Yeah. We don't hit. We're not in this house. As
no,
long as you live here, no hitting.
no, but that's also very controlling to a child. This is my space.
We'll give you a punching bag. You want to punch a bag? Punch a bag.
No,
Punch
but
the
you
sofa.
can't make it. Why should you make a rule? This is shared space. You can't make a rule in shared space. You
Because
can.
we're the parents. That's
What?
why. Because we're the parents. We're responsible for the whole family.
But you can't make a rule in shared space. They have a space here too. That's exactly the point. You shouldn't make rules in shared space either. It should be that when you see them hitting a sibling, you can tell them to stop. But you can't make a rule that's going to limit them
Why not?
because you're controlling the
They
person.
have limitations, just like in the Torah we have limitations.
What do you mean? If you make the rules, you don't have limitations. They have limitations. That's not a healthy
No, we
thing
have
to.
limitations too.
Where's your limitation?
It applies to us as well.
There's what?
The same rules apply to us as well.
But if you make the rules, so that's not a limitation. That's what you decided you want to do.
But it's for everybody's benefit.
No, it's for the benefit. You think it's for everybody's benefit. The child feels no. The child starts up with me. I'm my sibling. I want to hit them. Sylvia.
There are, I'm sorry, I lost my voice. There are laws of cause and effect.
You what?
There are laws of cause and effect. Laws of cause and effect that have nothing to do with one person's will upon somebody else. And if you present it as laws of cause and effect and not as somebody subjugating somebody else, it has a different attitude.
Why is it law of cause and effect?
Law of gravity.
No, there is laws of cause and effect, but why is this a laws of cause and effect? That
If you have, just as you have to train your child that they cannot jump out of a window, touch a fire, or do other dangerous things.
that's laws to protect them for themselves. That's laws to protect them, to protect them. But how's there a law? You can't hit your brother. I can beat him up. I'm protecting him.
That's protecting them too.
You will be bringing more aggression in this world, and it will come back at you.
What's going to come back at you?
Aggression.
What?
Aggression. If you're allowed to hit people, they'll hit you back.
Is there some law of physics that aggression comes back to you?
There's
Yes.
a law of cause and effect that aggression will come back.
I don't believe there's a law like that.
In the same.
If kids hit anybody, somebody else is going to hit them. That's the way it works.
There are laws.
I'm the biggest one in the house, and none of my younger siblings are going to start up with me.
That's the difference between men and women.
What?
Size is not the issue.
No, size is always.
I'm the fastest and the strongest, and they're not going to start up with me.
No. From the time my children were 6 months old, they were already faster and stronger and smarter.
It's true.
That part I believe, Sylvia.
That's true.
That I have no disagreement with you.
And she just knew that.
And your grandchildren are even smarter than you. And your grandchildren are even smarter than your children. They're unbelievable.
No, she just confessed that she was the smallest and she was the most impressive. But now she's so perfect that I don't have to do anything ever again.
Let me tell you what I think the Torah's approach here is.
Hashem has all these rules for us. Hashem is
God
like
doesn't
the
give
big
us.
father in the sky.
God doesn't give us any pressure to do anything.
Sure he does.
No. Just listen. We don't. That's exactly what I'm saying. God doesn't have any pressure on us at all. God tells us this is the best way to live.
That's right.
But you have free choice, so you do whatever you want. You do whatever you want. It's only a question of free choice, so do whatever you want.
But free will has consequences.
Free will doesn't have
Disobey
any
certain rules.
free will has no consequences at all. You're in charge.
If you do things to other people that are bad things will happen to you.
No.
You'll be in a bad environment. You'll create a bad environment for yourself.
You're making up stuff. Where does that say that in the Torah? Where's the Torah make up? You're making up stuff. I'm not trying.
Not really, because when the Torah gives us a bunch of rules of how to live, and it tells us that we honor our mother and father, don't steal, don't kill, observe the Shabbat. All these things that we do, there's 613 commandments. None of us can really fulfill all of them.
But there's no consequences to it.
There are consequences.
There are no consequences. There are no consequences.
Oh yeah, there's
in the world to
Parsha,
come.
I'm trying to remember which Parsha it is that tells you what's going to happen to you if you if you mess up.
In all the consequences of the
You'll have rain. You'll have your fields will grow beautifully. Well, I'm sure he does.
Let's go through it. Let's go slow. There's two kind of consequences in the Torah. The Torah says the consequence you'll get killed if you desecrate the Shabbos. That consequence can never, ever, ever be fulfilled. Because if a person, you have to give the person warning. And if the person keeps his mouth shut, then you can't kill him. If a person even says, yes, I know, and he waits 3 seconds between the time of the warning and between time he said that, he gets free. So there's no consequence that the Torah gives us that is actually a consequence that can be carried out. It's just that God is telling us what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. But there's no consequences whatsoever. There's no consequences whatsoever. And the consequences, the general consequences that you find if you do all the mitzvahs that the world is going to be incredible. The Rambam tells us that's going on the world to come. But in this world, it's not going to be really good for you, because what happens when things are really great for you, you're going to rebel. Vayishman Yeshurun v'yivot. So God doesn't make it really good, because then you're going to rebel. You got fat and you're going to rebel. And He doesn't make it too bad, otherwise you're going to rebel for the other reason that God doesn't like you. But the consequence. I'm telling you what it says in the Rambam. So let's go a little further now. We're trying to learn this. We're trying to learn it together. I want to give you my understanding. I appreciate everybody's input. It's helpful to clarify what the issue here is. When a child starts hitting a parent, you know what you do? You do nothing. But you know what? The child's going to be going to school. And in school, it's going to teach him you should honor your parents. That's okay. I don't have to worry about my child being disrespectful, his whole life of being disrespectful to me, because in school, somewhere, you're going to send him to a Jewish school, we're going to say it's a very high value to honor your parents. The school doesn't get any mileage out of that, so therefore the child feels trustworthy. If you tell the child you have to honor your parents, you can be sure you're going to be in an old age home, you're going to be hoping that they'll come and see you occasionally. That's exactly the point. When you tell a child you have to do this because you owe it to me, you owe it to your parents, you have to respect your parents, that's the child that can't wait till he's old enough and out of the house, and maybe he calls you once in a while before Shabbos, maybe he doesn't call you. That's what the Torah is telling us here. The Torah is telling us here that the goal is to the only real healthy way is the child has to discipline himself. Discipline is not something to be imposed on somebody, because anytime discipline is imposed on somebody, the person himself becomes resentful. He's going to react. He's going to rebel against that. The only thing that's healthy is that the child should say, listen, I feel very important. I don't want to do something that I don't think is good for me. I don't want to do something that's beneath my level. He has to learn how to discipline himself. The goal of education, the goal of bringing up children is getting them to control themselves. Not that I control them, because that's an ongoing fight. And the only way you can do that is by making the child feel good about himself. The pasuk says, Shlomo Melech says, Yishma Chochem. No, sorry. Al tochach letz. This is pasuk of Mishlei. Al tochach letz. Do not criticize a letz. Pen yisne'eko, lest he hates you. Yishma Chochem, Yochach Chochem. But criticize the Chochem v'yovek, and he'll love you. So the Shalom Kodesh says an unbelievable pshat in this pasuk. He says like this: if when you give criticism to a person, you tell him, "You dummy, this is just decent people don't do this," he's going to hate you. If you give him criticism, you're so smart and you're so intelligent that this is not something that's proper for you to do, then that's the only way to do it, because then I'm giving you the insight, because then that's the way he will learn how to discipline himself. Because if I feel that how I behave is a mark of who I am, and that's saying who I am, not what you think of me. I don't care what you think of me. But I feel pride in being able to control myself, then that works. It's like the same thing with diets. You're going to get cancer, you're going to get diabetes, you're going to look better, healthier. That doesn't do anything until the person himself has the desire that he feels that it's its own motivation. He gets motivated himself and feels fulfillment himself from doing something. The only thing that ever works is a person regulating himself, not a person outsiders, whether it's parents, schools, or anything else. If their goal is to regulate the children, yeah, you can do that. That's what communist countries do. You make enough terror so you can regulate anybody's behavior, but you're crippling and crushing the person, and it's an explosion waiting to happen. I mean, communism tried it, and in 70 years it exploded. No matter how much toleration or how much pressure you put on a person, you can just do it for a while, but eventually there's going to be an explosion. The only thing that ever works is the person learning how to regulate himself. You can, again, a third world country will pressure a person. God does not pressure people, because at the end of the day, that'll just be God hating people. People will hate God. It's not about pressuring a person. It's about getting a person to recognize that he's very uplifted. He's God has empowered him with many gifts, and therefore he wants to be able to utilize his own intelligence, utilize his own mind, utilizes his body for great things, and therefore that will be a motivation that the person himself has. And you can't teach motivation to a person. The only thing you can teach is feeling good about a person. We all have the ability to make a person feel good about themselves, and if we go out of our way to make a person feel good about themselves, then they will be motivated to regulate themselves. This is where where all of us need a lot of improvement in this. That we all trying to give a person lessons of what's good for him and do this for that, and this will be good for you. That's not the way to do it, and that's not the way God does it in the Torah. It's that he just lets us know how much he loves them. And that's what a parent has to do. How much I love you. the way a parent has to deal with a child is, I love you. The child starts hitting the mother. Uncle, I love you. I love you. I love you. Not why are you doing this? I love you. And then the child feels unconditional love. The child feels unconditional love from the parent, unconditional love from the Rabbi. Then there'll be a huge serious possibility and likelihood that the child will actually start regulating himself. The only thing that can make a person regulate himself is when he feels unconditional love from the parents. That's what I think is the way to do it. That's what I think the Torah is teaching us, and that's what it's saying over here. That the way you teach humility has a second half that has to be, and that is that you have to give him unconditional love. Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God, unconditional love for the Jewish people. They're going to curse you. I love you. Why are you doing this? I love you. Yes, he went to God and complained, God, how did you give me people that are so difficult? And God said, I told you when I made you the leader give them unconditional love. When I made you the leader of the Jewish people, I told you have to give them unconditional love. And unconditional love works. Nothing other than unconditional love works. No one here, nobody who's anybody who's not a descendant from Adam is excluded from this. But anyone who's a descendant from Adam knows that telling a person you're not allowed to do this and it's wrong, and giving a punishment, it's going to happen, that the person's going to escalate the war and say, I'm going to continue eating. Even though they did a very minor thing, I'm going to continue eating. And I'll just leave it one little piece in addition to this. After Adam eats from the Eitz Hadas, he realizes he's naked and he's thrown out of the Gan Eden. And what happens? God made him clothing, right? That's what everybody knows, give him clothing. But if you look at the Gemara, it's not that only that God made him clothing. You know what he did? God dressed him. God acted like a gentleman's gentleman to Adam Rishon. God dressed him. Stick out your hand. Stick out your hand. Okay. Let me fix your tie, Adam Rishon. That's a whole different level than giving a person clothing. Giving a person clothing means you're naked. I'm giving you something because you have a problem. But what about when I dress you? What am I doing then? I'm making myself less. I'm making you higher. The gentleman's gentleman is lower, and he elevates it. That's what God does to the person who ate from the Eitz Hadas, escalated the war and told God, I'm going to continue eating. And he was naked. And to that person who's so rebellious is the one that, God, after God gave him everything else in the Garden of Eden, to eat whatever he wanted. One tree he couldn't eat, and he ate. And when God said, how dare you do that? And he said, I'm going to continue eating. And then he becomes naked. And that is the person that God at that moment says, I got to be his gentleman's gentleman, which is an incredible, incredible amount of unconditional love. That's the definition of unconditional love. When a child has done something terrible, you have to do the opposite. Instead of reminding him how bad he did, you have to tell him how proud you are to have a son like this, or have a daughter like this. You can find something always. Even when a person does something wrong, there was a perspective they wanted to accomplish. They stole something. You know, when you steal something, it means you value that thing. How proud I am to have a son who values this. The fact that you value this, I'm also proud of that. Your daughter says something. Just stealing is a very simple example. If someone steals something, you can make them feel good too. If it's a child. How proud I am to have a child that values a book. You stole a book from somebody, how proud I am to have a child that values a book.
But this is not how you get a book.
Excuse me? It's the opposite of everything you said. It's the opposite of everything you said. If you listen good, it's the opposite of everything you said. You have to figure out how to make them feel good, even when they do something bad. See the good in the bad, and then you'll have a chance. And once he feels how much you love him, and that even his shortcomings are something which is a positive, at that point, the child will then start regulating himself. Okay, everybody have a great Shabbat.